Good afternoon everyone and welcome to episode 1 of Thundercast, which is going to be a new regular series on this channel dedicated to answering questions and covering various topics in War Thunder. With this channel beginning to focus on more professional quality videos and better production value, I needed a little side series where we could just go through War Thunder matches and cover topics that maybe don't fit in those regular videos. And that's what this is going to be. In today's episode, we're talking about the M1A2 Abrams and how it can combat the very powerful Russian teams with the addition of the new main battle tank, the T-72B3. I have muted the gameplay in the background, and while we will be going through it and showcasing what's happening during these matches, feel free to simply listen to this video and treat it as a traditional podcast. So after my video on the T-72B3 and the comments that a lot of you left about how the Russian top tier lineup had become unbeatably powerful, and the Americans and other nations just couldn't compete, there are a few things I feel like I need to discuss while we take a look at the following 3 matches I played over the last couple of days in which we consistently defeated top tier Russian teams. So you join me at the south side of the Tunisia map in a single cap game mode in what is actually my second spawn in the M1A2 Abrams. The first thing I did in this match was bring out the American light tank, the HSTVL, hoping to sneak in a quick cap before the Russians were ready, but unfortunately I screwed that up, got killed without doing anything useful, and now not only am I down a very powerful vehicle, especially in the late game, but the opposing team control that capture point. On Tunisia, this also means that they control most of the town, so having crossed the bridge keeping us safe from a crossfire from the west, we're now holding here and waiting for tanks to overextend out of the town rather than pushing in against the enemy team. Russian tanks at the top rank can be very difficult to dig out, but when they're advancing, just like that T-72B3, they are incredibly vulnerable, and their armour kind of belongs to that all or nothing scheme. So with that being said, your tactic on the opposing team should be not to fight them head to head, position to position, but to catch them on their advance, let them come to you, or let them think they're coming to you whilst you lie in wait in a cover position ready to ambush them when they're least expecting it. Now I'm working with the friendly M1A2 here, snapped an easy kill off through the lower plate of the T-80U after he fired at our friend here, and that's something that the Russian tanks really struggle to handle, more so than other nations' MPTs, a 2-on-1 assault, even from random teammates like in this situation. As we move up, our teammate is going to machine gun into this building in front of us here, so I'm going to pick a good location, fire through it, hoping that if there's an enemy tank using it for cover, our friendly can take him out before he can snap a shot into us. Unfortunately, the T-72B3 was ready for that round here, so we snap a shot into his lower plate once again before he can get a second round ready to fire at me. Whilst this is going on, we've had teammates over in the northern and the western sides of the town, which means I know that I can push in here safely because looking at where my teammates are, they are going to be preoccupying anybody who is in a position to stop me advancing. And that's exactly how I was able to push against that T-80 there and secure another easy kill. With him down, we are now beginning to capture A, and I'm using these buildings to my right for cover from the enemy helicopter I know is up there, and our friendly Sam takes him out. I know there are at least 2 T-80s still in the town though, because our allies who were here have both been killed, so what I'm doing is trying to force them to come at me one at a time, in such a way that they have to use predictable routes to come to me. I'm not going hunting for them. Actually took me a second longer than it should have to spot where the T-72 had just fired from at the back of the cap, no idea what he was firing at, but we're going to use that opportunity to disable him, and after dealing with a very poorly planned rush from the T-80, that was the worst way he could possibly have handled that situation, we're now free to move up and take out the T-72. Before I do, however, I'm going to let off some smoke grenades, and now those weren't for defensive purposes. What I'm going to do instead is move through the smoke screen, meaning that I wouldn't have any of this T-72's pesky friends stopping me from taking him out. The engine smoke may have worked, but engine smoke doesn't protect you from thermals, keep that in mind. Now here is where I made a big mistake. I've forgotten about that second T-80 who was in the cap, remember I said there were 2 of them. So even though I whiffed that first shot against the T-72B3, I would have been safe if it weren't for that second T-80 who gets me reloading straight through the building. I do have plenty of spawn points however, and I know there are 2 tanks sitting in that capture circle, so I come in with the F-40, unfortunately only get 1, die immediately to a Tunguska. This map is kind of too small for fixed wing aircraft at this tier, Sam's just cover too much of the battlefield. But now we're into our second Abrams, the M1A1. I've come around the flank here along the coast, which is going to give me an easy shot into a once again preoccupied T-80B. Too often I see Abrams players complaining about the weaknesses of their tank when what they're doing is attempting to fight head on. They don't see the M1 Abrams main battle tank as the sort of tank that needs to utilise hidden flanking manoeuvres. They see it as a juggernaut that can go toe to toe with the Russians or Germans in a position fight. I'll skip past the dull section of the game here to save time, by the way. Now this isn't surprising because what's the Abrams most famous for? The Gulf War, where it did exactly that. M1A1s were practically able to roll over the entire Iraqi tank force without even putting on the brakes. They weren't looking for flanking routes to keep themselves hidden and fight an enemy who never saw them coming. They weren't scared of anything, or at least that's the popular image of them. And even if this wasn't an embellishment, the Abrams in that conflict were fighting T-55s and T-72s and have continued to do so since, so they have fought them head on. In a fight against an equivalent adversary, however, like a T-90 or a T-72B3, the Abrams would not be fighting a position fight. They'd be using every trick in the book, flanking around and taking sneaky, opportunistic shots, instead of fighting a fair fight where each tank knows that the enemy is there and it purely comes down to who kills who first, and that should be your playstyle in War Thunder 2. Leave the Russians to stand and fight position to position, while you take covered ambush positions or flanking routes, whichever is applicable at any given time. That's no Russian bias or Russian tanks being overpowered, that's the natural dynamics of your tanks going to work, and it's actually quite good for nations to have recognisable playstyles like that. If you want a tank that doesn't have to be sneaky, a tank that can be the aggressor, you play Russia or Germany. Don't try to force any other nation's tanks into that playstyle, because you will lose, as you should. The Abrams just isn't for you in that case. The Abrams, however, is fantastic at responding to threats dynamically and using your opponent's energy against them. It's honestly more of a martial artist than a heavyweight boxer, as un-American as that might be. At this point in this match, we have taken the position that we are going to sit in until pretty much the end of the game. Considering that we have the cap, we have zero need to advance further, and no teammates to back us up or for us to support in turn. We are going to load up one of these proximity fuse impact rounds when a K-52 flies over, but I didn't end up having a shot or needing it, as the Hokum was more keen on engaging fresh spawns than helping his team clear the objective. A really poor move on his part. Besides a couple of extra kills on Tunguskis, that was the match over. We did end up dying to a K-50, which we then took out immediately with the ADATs, but the enemy team weren't able to get any tanks into the cap in time to arrest the ticket blade, and even after repair cost, this 11 kill match would earn us about 24,000 silver. In the T-72B3 video, I think a lot of people were mistaking what I was saying to be that I was downplaying how powerful top tier Russia is right now, which is not what I was saying at all. I do think Russia is probably the quote unquote best top tier nation, or at least the easiest to win with. What I was saying in the video was that it's neither T-64s and T-72A that make it so. While Russia can bring in a lineup of more tanks than any other nation can, it's not smart to do so, and a diverse lineup will always beat one saturated with MBTs and nothing else. What I didn't talk about, however, was repair cost, which seemed to be the main reason a lot of you actually had a problem with balance at the top rank, and I fully understand this. I was just being slightly naive in that because I play pretty much every tier on the game instead of focusing on any one, I'm able to bank up plenty of Silver Lions at rank 2 and 3, and then not care if I lose money playing rank 7. The Russian lineup, while matched by America, Germany, Britain, or even Italy, is unfairly cheap to bring out, and while I may not change up my playstyle based on vehicle cost and therefore not see it as a balancing factor, a lot of you very clearly do, and fair enough. So in light of that, I have this next match to talk about, in which we were able to comprehensively wipe the floor with the Russian team, using only a single spawn. We're on Berlin once again in the M1A2, and we're taking the right flank over by the burned out Reichstag building. My initial plan had been to focus on pushing around the far side of the Reichstag. God, this video is getting demonetized, thanks YouTube. But with my team pretty heavily focusing on the alpha side and the middle of the map, I decided support was looking a wee bit thin for us to push up the flank, so instead we're going to work on the Charlie cap and let the flankers on the enemy team come to us. Unfortunately, I can't move into the capture circle. This map isn't what I'd call imbalanced, but the enemy do have the specific advantage that they can capture Charlie from a covered position, while our team can't, or at least I can't from here. Not to worry though, as my team has the strength in numbers on the other side, they're going to take those caps and then hold that flank, and I can simply hold the enemy team to a stalemate on this side myself, and then spin around to deal with enemies flanking to the right before they can settle into position. Or at least that's the plan. Now, a Russian tank could not do what I'm doing here, but in the Abrams, this is my forte. I can peek like this all day long if I want to, and we are also going to be joined by an M1A2 who can cap while covered. No idea how he got there without taking shots, but our team is starting to fan out across the map though, and with him there, I'm no longer needed to gate guard this position. Now, in this particular match, not only were we facing the Russians, but Kaijin's incredible matchmaker saw fit to pair them with the Germans and Italians as well. Meanwhile, we have the French on our team, and I want you lads to let me know what you think of this in the comments. I've been seeing several matches where America, Britain and sometimes Japan have fought literally everyone else. The Germans, Swedes and Italians have all fought for the Russians. On the one hand, this does mean fewer Russians on the Russian team, but on the other, the Swedish and Italians share the only round that can reliably penetrate through the front of both the M1A2 with its depleted uranium turret armour, the Challenger 2's turret, as well as the Russians right through their heavy ERA. You've also got the Swedish and Germans with arguably the best main battle tanks in the game. The Stridsfarm 122 is almost undeniably the best by itself, but without helicopters or cast to back it up. While the Leopard 2A5 isn't quite as good, but is backed up by a MiG-21 and the best helicopter in the game, the Tiger, which the German model is the only helicopter currently with fire and forget missiles. There's also the factor that the opposing team now have not only the Russian playstyle working for them, but the German as well to offset the weaknesses the Russians face, and the Americans have only a single playstyle with which to fight back. So in my opinion, this matchmaking is extremely unfair to us, and NATO versus Russia and China, once China gets a top tier tank, a SAM, better CAS and a helicopter, would work far better. Now, I really hope you guys were watching that there. Knowing that several enemy tanks had made it around the Reichstag, I headed back around to help our friendly M1A2, and we were easily able to defeat their push by working together like that. The enemy team were not only caught unawares by the presence of a second M1A2, but were actually only able to fire at us one at a time, meaning that although there were 3 over there, actually 4, we were able to effectively fight them in 3 separate 2v1s. That's a textbook use of the Abrams. For the 4th enemy tank back there who couldn't see us through the smoke, we've relocated, we actually turned around and drove back to a better hold down position. Remember, you can do that, double back and go for a better position to fight from. People don't seem to do that very often in this game. Unfortunately, I didn't quite get there in time, so I had to move a wee bit further back into a fully covered spot to repair, and in that time our friendly M1A2 got taken out, although not before taking out the T-72. I was lamenting not being able to push out against the Ariete PSO who damaged our turret here, really underrated tank that, and he was then joined by a Leopard 2A4. But I actually have no need to risk a push. The enemies over there may be in theoretically a good position, but my being here has meant that they can't use it. They are effectively dead already, just through being irrelevant to their team. Had a bit of trouble taking out the Ariete, I should have just gone for the driver, and I wasn't aware that I'd killed his horizontal turret drive, so I was probably being a wee bit more cautious than I needed to be here, thinking that he was going to shoot me should I poke out, as I am a one-shot kill pretty much anywhere for that tank right now. At this stage, the enemy team have made a push on Charlie, but they're going to be shut down before completing the cap, which means that we still hold 2 caps to their none. What that means is that they have to come to us if they want to win, and for the enemies towards the centre of the map to move, they need the Ariete to push this flank, which he can't, with me here. What all this means is that we have to do basically nothing but hold our ground. A stalemate is a win for us at this point. This is just compounded by the fact that we've gotten a tank into the cap, so the enemy team are bleeding tickets fast, and they still can't move out in the way that they need to without dying and hemorrhaging even more of their steadily dwindling supply of tickets, as well as spawn points. There's the Leopard 2A4 joining the Ariete PSO over there. Does complicate things for me, meaning that they can alternate their shots, so I can't push out and get one of them on the reload. But at the same time, like I said, a stalemate is still perfectly fine by me in this area of the map. And another tank over there just means another tank on the enemy team, not somewhere more useful. This sort of boils down to what I said about the T-72B3 in that video, because if the enemy team had had any air support at this point, we would have been dead. But their lineups are all obviously either poor lineups in general, or heavily tank focused, which has prevented them from responding to this situation in the way that they need to, by bringing in air support to flush us out. Now the ridge in front of me perfectly complements the armour profile of the Abrams. Seriously, keep an eye on this ridge if you need to defend this side of this map. The Leopard over there is just harmlessly plugging rounds into my DU turret armour without a shot into any of my weak spots, and he's rushing shots in an attempt to dissuade me from making a legitimate push. Which I can anyway because the Ariete is there, but I'm not sure the Leopard understood that. As soon as the Ariete fires at the M1A1 over there, however, these two are both goners. We take the opportunity to focus the priority target, the Ariete PSO. Now I can guarantee the effectiveness of my armour, and then the Leopard 2A4 by himself is no trouble to make up a nice 5th kill. That means that given that we only used a single tank, which didn't die, this match earned us a pretty penny, over 45,000 silver lions, which means about 28,000 or so without premium. What you guys should take away from these matches is the way in which different nations' tanks like to push up to advance. Germany loves to advance right across the map in a wedge or phalanx formation, forcing a breach and then keeping that momentum going to carry them to victory. Think of the letter V with the point constantly piercing towards the enemy spawn. They can focus a specific flank of course, but they should always have a recognisable point that is the furthest forward. Russian tanks are more suited to position fights, whittling down numbers of enemy tanks by way of area denial, and then moving up in a bracket formation, with the flanks extending simultaneously, slightly ahead of the central force, but never far. The Abrams, however, like to advance almost in a Mexican wave type fashion, allowing enemies to overextend right into their waiting arms, or guns, and then quickly pushing up all at once, clearing an area before the next wave of enemy tanks can coordinate another push, against which they perform the exact same strategy again. Let them push, kill them on the advance, help your allies clear the area, and caterpillar your way across the map. It's a playstyle that requires balls of rolled homogeneous steel and solid judgment of when to move up and when to hold. Now we had to do quite a lot of holding in this particular match, which, like the last, was actually played on one of our live streams over on Twitch, which you should definitely come and check out because I legitimately called this one of the best matches of War Thunder I've ever played. Also, like the last match, we didn't score a massive number of kills, ended up with 8 in this battle, which is definitely respectable, but it's more how we killed the enemies and how we played the map and responded to situations with our lineup. Actually, one thing I want to say here, now that I've got the chance, is that I love how everyone's complaining about the Russian tank lineup being overpowered at top tier, but nobody ever touches on the whopping 13 highly competitive vehicles in the German 4.0 lineup. That is just insane. You never run out of vehicles playing that BR. But when it came to this match, I really was worried about running out of spawns, and not because of any lack of ability to, although I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. We're holding the only location on this map I like to take. Stalingrad is a map I've never really liked, and I make no secret of that. Not because I think it's a bad map, in fact I think it's quite a well made one, especially compared to literally all of the maps that have been added since 2018. But this map, I just have never felt comfortable on. I just don't seem to be able to learn how to play it, and you're definitely going to see evidence of that in this match. What I've done is pick a position from which I can prevent an enemy flanking manoeuvre and guard the cap in front of me, although I can't push into it without creating an exploitable opening the enemy team will be all over. As you can see, they have been trying to sneakily push against me. They are moving past the cap without touching it, meaning I don't know when they're coming at me. Unfortunately for the Berzok down there, however, I did hear him coming, and I have plenty of cover here by which I can engage enemies once again, one by one. I'm still locked into this position however, and I'm kind of feeling the reverse of what we were doing to the Ariete and the Leopard 2 in the Berlin game. My team needs me overwatching the centre of the map, which I can't do with this T80B here. The T80 in turn is well dug in with no need to go anywhere, so I'm relying on his mistake in order to be able to kill him, which is never a good strategy, handing them the cards. There are some ways we can encourage one of those mistakes however. I'm trying to put shots through the foot of that oil tank there, but I can't shoot through it unfortunately. Quickly take out a cheeky tank destroyer who attempted to push around, but by repeatedly hitting the oil tank, I'm tricking the T80 into thinking that I can't get a clear shot at him, when really I was just trying to speed up the process by firing through his cover. It's a wee bit greedy, sure, it might have worked, not all cover that appears solid in this game actually is, but what it does do is lull him into a false sense of security. He moves out too far, overconfident in my supposed inability to return fire, and that didn't work out so well for him. It's at this point though that I really am in the pit. My team is down 2 caps and we're losing tanks, tickets and spawn points fast. So it's time for us to make our move and see what we can do to save this team. This means moving up in such a way that we're not playing to our vehicle's strengths, so we're going to have to be very careful for reasons just like this. Another Berazok waiting for a chance to ambush me and secure this flank. Had he killed me, our team would have been over, no two ways about it. But if you look at the minimap, we're actually not down quite as many tanks as it might look like. Once again, I want your guys' opinions on this, but we have 3 SAMs right down here in the back of the map, one of which is an ADATS, which is not just a SAM, but one of the most efficient tank destroyers in the game. They are going to each score a single aircraft kill, and the other 2 are pretty well ineffective against tanks, so what do you reckon? Is it fair for these SAM systems to sit right out of the battle like that? Unlike at lower tiers, their AA coverage spans the whole of a map this size, regardless of where they sit. But at the same time, they're spending 90% of this battle doing nothing, which means tanks down on our team for no real gain. In my opinion, it would be fair for 1 SAM to sit at the back of the map like that, maybe 2 at most, but the ADATS definitely should not be there. I think that's fair to say. Any more than 2, especially one like the ADATS, is just subtracting from the team in the battle itself, especially on a close-in map like this, where air support isn't nearly so much of a threat. Now, there are issues and benefits with the way I'm engaging the map right now. Number 1 issue is the fact that because I sat there and capped, the enemy team must know where I am and where I'm likely to be coming from. Except that T-64A who wasn't paying attention. But at the same time, there are still enough of our guys in the map itself that he couldn't have afforded to spin around and point his armour towards me anyway, which makes Russian tanks very easy kills. See, something I think people are always very quick to point out when it comes to this supposed idea of Russian superiority at top tier, and yes, there are still people calling the T80U better than the Leopard 2A5 when it's definitely not even on par, but people will point out the effectiveness of their armour. These are people who obviously have significant trouble aiming for weak spots for whatever reason, and when it comes to the T80 in particular, what they're likely doing is trying too hard. The T80 series have a big hole in the composite armour of their upper front plate. You don't need that perfect driver pot shot. Anywhere beneath it will likely penetrate if you're using top tier Sable rounds. There's just steel behind the ERA, and Contact 5 only reduces the penetration of your rounds. It doesn't destroy them outright. But people also like to forget just how delicate the sides of Russian tanks are, and the second you get even the slightest angle against them, they're an easy one-shot, given their small size, vulnerable ammo carousel, and a lack of a 4th crew member. They are far easier to kill than NATO MBTs, and even if you don't kill them on the first shot, you'll cripple them, and they just don't have the reverse gear to respond. Now, if you've been paying attention to the battle, you'll have seen my tank jumping around thanks to ping and packet loss, and those SAMs supposedly hanging back to protect us from enemy air support just let my position get bombed, which didn't damage me much besides setting me on fire, a fire which took long enough to put out that the T80B was able to disable me. I think there's definitely an argument to be made for automatic fire suppression systems being added for tanks that had them, but either way, ping likely would have stopped me killing that guy, and we get taken out by a second T80B coming down from the north. Once again, came back in the F4E, got a kill before getting taken out by AA, and that actually wasn't the end of my bombing in the Phantom. See, with so many kills achieved and so much done on the map, I actually had these spawn points for a backup F4E, which I spawned in and immediately ripped my wings in about a 2G pull for some reason. Thanks, Gaijin. The even more unfortunate thing was that my aircraft was still very easily controllable. I was barely noticing the loss of one wingtip, which shouldn't have come off in the first place, but that was apparently enough that the game felt the need to automatically bail me out. That means I'm now practically down all the spawn points I had with very little ability to get more, and that would end up almost being our downfall in this match. While all of this was going on, we've actually had a Leopard 2A5 sitting just behind Bravo. He's actually been there since before I captured Charlie almost 5 minutes ago, and I was cursing this guy for not moving up. Remember, I was playing all of these matches mid-livestream. Turns out I probably judged that guy too harshly, because he did prove a lifesaver against the two Tunguskas, the first of which immediately spammed out my cannon barrel, and he has now pushed up, so perhaps he was just waiting for some teammates to back him up, or perhaps he's low on SL and doesn't want to hack the repair costs. Once again, I totally agree, they're pretty balked right now. Now, thank goodness we were able to take this cap, as without it, I wouldn't have been able to respawn when I am about to make an incredibly dumb mistake. Really not proud of this. See, the Russians have captured Alpha, and I assumed once they'd done that, they'd want to use the flatter ground ahead of us to push toward Bravo, as Russian MBTs don't do so well on rocky terrain. They just don't have the ground clearance. Nor do they have the gun depression either. So looking the wrong way, I got myself killed, when I had no need whatsoever to push up at all. In fact, I was about to head instead back towards Charlie, anticipating that the enemy team's next move would be to attempt to push on that side. By now, we have been able to sneak tanks around to recapture Alpha. I'm coming ahead off the enemies on Bravo in the HSTVL, and while we are going to lose Charlie, it's not going to end up mattering. The enemy team are just out of spawns, and more importantly, out of spawn points. Remember guys, you're not fighting a superior lineup if you can just prevent them from farming SP. The best way to do this is to defend caps, not just focus on engaging them. In fact, it's wise not to until you're sure your team can hold it, as the enemy can't get any more spawn points from a capture point they already own. Having just prevented the enemy Tunguska from capping, I thought about moving into capture point Bravo myself here, but it's a completely unnecessary risk. The enemy team, should they want to win, have to come to us. We have no need to push further, we have the advantage. By the time the Russians do make a move on Charlie, although I did move into Bravo thinking that alright, we do need it now, which did end up killing me after all, the Russian team just didn't have enough time to capture Charlie, and our single cap was enough to win the match. Even with the wasted spawn in the Phantom, that match earned us 50,000 Silver Lions after repairs, and even without a premium account, would have earned us a net gain somewhere in the neighbourhood of 24,000 silver. It was also one of the most enjoyable matches I've ever played, and I have to give a massive credit to the German players who scored 2 and 3 on the team. So to answer the main question of today's episode, yes, the M1A2 can very much beat top tier Russia, and even make a substantial profit while doing it, thanks to its diverse lineup which more than matches up to what Russia has, even if it is potentially more expensive to use right now. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Thundercast, make sure to like if you did and subscribe for more. And I heard a rumour that if you do like and share this video, you'll be given stock APFSDS back. What the hell, it's worth a shot, right? If there are any stylistic changes you'd like to see in future episodes, which will hopefully be coming out every other Friday from now on, and sticking to the roughly half-hour length, then leave your suggestions in the comments below, as well as what topics you'd like to see me tackle in this series. And as always, keep a whiskey to hand, keep your kilt on, and I'll catch you lads next time. Oh, I'm so sorry for this M1A2, he's about to die. He's still alive actually, they both just fired. Good, Ariete down. Okay, nothing can pin my turret now, good. Leopard 2's left. Come on, I need to save my friendly. Yes, good. Oh, I need a cup of tea after that.